Hi, everyone. Today we have myself, Amanda Hudson, who is our lead social worker on our guardianship information line, Kathleen Carlson, who is our lead social worker in in-person assessments, and Anita Raymond, who's the program director here at the Center for Excellence in Supported Decision Making. There has been a lot of media attention and conversations about the Free Britney movement. And for those of you that are not aware, there's a New York Times episode on Hulu that shares a perspective of Britney Spears' conservatorship. So here in Minnesota, we have guardianship and conservatorship, both of which are court processes, which result in the appointment of an individual or an organization who has legal authority to make personal decisions. So again, that's for the guardianship, or financial decisions, which is called a conservatorship, for an incapacitated person who thoroughly is unable to provide for their own basic needs or financial affairs. So in California, they use the terminology conservatorship for both a state and the person. And again, in Minnesota, we call it guardianship for matters related to the person and conservatorship for finances, just to give a little clarification there. So we three watched this documentary, and the quick summary is Britney Spears is a young, talented artist. She worked her way up through the industry. She became very famous. Over the years, she was picked apart for choices she made, the pressures of fame and judgments by others in the industry. Questions about her mental health started happening, and her family became very concerned about her well-being. So her father petitioned for temporary conservatorship of her estate and conservatorship for the person. And there were additional concerns about undue influence and risk, but the documentary will go into that in more details. Initially, too, Britney told her attorney that she agreed she needed additional help and knew she couldn't avoid a conservatorship, but really didn't want her father making those choices for her. And then, long story short, a general conservatorship was ordered. Then there was a series of events that occurred. The Free Britney movement started happening. Court hearings were occurring where Britney was asking her father to be removed. Mind you that the attorney costs for both parties, court filing fees, all of this is billed to Britney's estate. So she's paying for all of this, mind you. And the court hearings remain ongoing at this point. So obviously we don't know the full story, and we're not going to dissect her situation necessarily here today, but we really wanted to bring up similar parallels that we're seeing within our own office. Professionals and families who have concerns about someone think that guardianship will make a person compliant with medications or treatments, will make them make better choices. And so often guardianship becomes the default and is assumed that that's the only way to protect someone from further harm and risk. And so today we just really wanted to talk about some of those parallels within our own office and what we're seeing here in Minnesota.
I think, Amanda, it's interesting that you made a point of indicating, and the movie did a good job of indicating that, yeah, Britney's paying for all of the costs of it. And that's a reality. That's the same in Minnesota. In Minnesota, if a person is not indigent or medical assistance eligible, yeah, the court filing fees, the petitioner's attorney, the court appointed attorney, the ongoing costs of administering the guardianship conservatorship, yeah, that all comes out of the person's estate. And that's, I think, something families don't think about a lot. I think sometimes when there's a lot of conflict and we're thinking about guardianship or conservatorship, to appoint an official person to avoid that conflict it's going to be expensive. So that was a big takeaway for sure. Another takeaway for me, well, there were several, but another one was the relief that in Minnesota, our guardianship statute is really designed and written to attempt to be as person-centered as possible, albeit when there's a guardian appointed, there's automatically and forever, as long as the guardianship is established, there's a power imbalance. Someone has authority over someone else. But we have a Bill of Rights. There's a lot of language in our guardianship statute about a person's right to interact with people they wish, just a slew of rights, and that their preferences be considered and that they have input to decisions. And an ongoing theme in the documentary was she didn't want her father acknowledging maybe I need a guardian or conservator, but I don't want it to be my father. And so my takeaways there were, in Minnesota, the person typically their preferences are listened to. If they have to have a guardian or conservator, even if they don't want one, but they have to have one, they get to say who they want it to be, and barring proof that that's not a good fit, that person can't serve in their best interest, typically courts will appoint the person that the principal or person subject to guardianship wants. So that was something I was thinking about. And then the other thing I was thinking about a lot, and then I'll let Kathleen weigh in with her thoughts too, but I was thinking a lot about, they mentioned throughout and seemed to hint that Britney herself was okay with having help. Here in Minnesota, if we were to get that kind of call in our office, we would really want to be exploring, and again, totally we don't know what was going on in her situation, but here, what we do know is when somebody says, yeah, I could use some extra help, that's a perfect opportunity to explore arrangements outside of court, whether it's a representative payee, if a governmental benefit is their only income, or if they're a mega superstar and they have unlimited assets and income, maybe a trust or a power of attorney or something like that. So there's just so many opportunities. I know that's something you two talk about with the people you interact with when I'm out doing trainings. Hey, somebody says they want some help. Let's put the brakes on a court arrangement and let's see if we can find some other approaches. So those are some of the big takeaways I've been thinking about since I saw it. How about you, Kathleen?
Yeah, those are really good points, and I've had similar takeaways as well. And I think here in Minnesota, I don't know all the laws and everything that's available in California, but I know, we have a lot of options now that maybe we didn't even have 5-10 years ago to support people. So when we do get those calls, like you said, Anita, that's a great time to say, well, what kind of help? What are we talking here? And let's really dive in and explore what other ways we can get that help outside of court and removing someone's rights if those options exist. So that there was a lot of ping ponging for me when I was watching this, because I was thinking, okay, like this is what information they're presenting to us. And then I'm kind of comparing it to, I wonder if that's the truth or if that's the whole story, but then also looking at, well, this is how we do it here in Minnesota. And it was interesting to watch that and kind of just mull it over. I think I'm going to watch it again as well. But I think Amanda brought the point up and Anita alluded to guardianship or conservatorship, but specifically in Minnesota, I know people will seek guardianship when they're worried about something that a person's doing that's putting them at a certain level of risk. And that risk may be small, it may be a little bit bigger, but looking at guardianship as a mechanism to essentially control somebody, maybe change someone's actions, maybe try to make them do something that you think is in their best interest. And that's really not what it's intended for. And that's something that hopefully we're having more conversation. So if we're identifying, somebody's making some choices that are less than ideal, they're putting themselves at a level of risk, maybe they're going to be kicked out of their apartment and this isn't the first time that's happened. Let's talk through kind of getting to the root of why that's happening and other ways we can support that person outside of looking at guardianship to kind of force things. I don't know if you all have other examples that you kind of hear that you would like to apply to that circumstance, or.
I think not necessarily. Well, I found it interesting that they were hoping, or at least it presented the notion that they were hoping to control her behavior, to get her to do something she didn't want to do. In this case, keep performing, to keep generating more revenue for the estate, which is good for her, for sure. But just it dovetails off what you were saying. Like we can have a lot of authority over a person, but we can't get them to do something necessarily. All the consent power in the world doesn't necessarily gain compliance. So that's something I know you two talk about with people you work with, as I do as well. Like, okay, what are we hoping to gain? And compliance doesn't always come with a consent power, which when you get down to it is what guardianship actually is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think trying to get people, like, can we meet? Can we have a common ground? Can we get somebody to come along with what we're hoping for them, as opposed to trying to force them to do it? Because like in this documentary, someone's telling you, I want you to work, I want you to do this. And then she's saying, nope, I'm not going to because you want me to, and I don't want to.
Right.
So then you get into a big power struggle that's really not meeting anyone's needs.
And that reminds me of another Minnesota difference is in Minnesota, if a person does have gainful employment, if a person has wages, unless specifically delineated by court order, that person gets to keep controlling, even if they have a conservator, even if they have a guardian, they get to stay in control of their own wages, which I think is the only way to go. And if for some reason a person, isn't safe, is getting exploited, then there can be a court order that the conservator does control wages. But I think, again, the Britney story kind of demonstrates, or can demonstrate, if I'm having to get up and go to work and I don't feel like, and it's cold outside or it's lovely outside and I want to play instead of work, and I don't get the benefit of the paycheck anyway because my conservator gets it, where's my incentive to keep working? So that's another thing I really appreciate about Minnesota law too, and how we are pretty person-centered in so many ways. Again, don't forget there's that power imbalance, but we have a lot of protections that I don't think there could be the same Britney story here that is shown in real life in California. So.
Those are really excellent points. And I think what I've noticed too is in similar situations that we field within our guardianship information calls, a lot of it's just lack of communication too. And oftentimes like the guardian and the person subject to guardianship or their support team have the same goals or the same wishes, but it's just for some reason it's not being communicated effectively that way. So then one person just gets like, okay, well, I'm not doing anything until this happens. And then everyone's trying to force that person to do something. And so it's just kind of, the reasons for guardianship being in place paired with the practicality of like, what authority do you have and not have? And you can't make someone do something. And so yet, how do we, that autonomy of the person? And so that to me is always really interesting too. Just the lack of communication alone can be challenging. So definitely a lot of interesting points that our office brings up. And just as a reminder, because it's been a while since we've had a video, but we do provide free in-depth phone-based consultations to discuss these exact situations that families, professionals, or persons subject to guardianship may be in. We also offer objective in-person assessments where, like in Britney's situation, we may be able to come in and assess the need for guardianship, conservatorship, always with the focus of looking at alternatives. And so that's kind of the lens of our office. And please let us know and comment below if you've watched the documentary and or what your experience is within guardianship, conservatorship. We appreciate any feedback and any thoughts or support that you might have as well. So thank you very much.
And let's do this again and talk about I Care a Lot. Let's get together and keep this movie club going.
Yeah. We'll be back soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.